He wiped the counter for the 100th time that night, exhausted. Customers came and went, leaving nothing but cold stares and loose change. He thought no one noticed him, no one cared about his long, lonely days. Then he spotted something tucked inside his tip jar. A small, folded piece of paper. What it said stopped him in his tracks, leaving him completely speechless. It was another rainy evening at Joe's Coffee Corner, a small cafe tucked between two towering office buildings. Joe had been running this cafe for nearly 10 years, a quiet man with tired eyes and a gentle smile. He loved coffee, he loved the aroma, the way it could brighten someone's day, but lately, it felt like no one noticed him at all. He remembered the mornings when people would chatter happily, when kids would rush in after school, and strangers would smile as he handed them their lattes. But these days, the cafe felt empty. People came, they took their coffee, and they left without a word. The once bustling cafe now echoed with the sound of spoons clinking against ceramic mugs. Joe's hands were calloused from years of brewing, pouring, and wiping down tables. Behind the counter, the tip jar sat almost untouched. Sometimes it had a few coins, sometimes a crumpled dollar bill, but mostly it was empty. And that emptiness, Joe realized, mirrored his own loneliness. He had a routine that kept him moving, but it also kept him isolated. His neighbors were friendly enough, but none really knew him. He lived alone in a small apartment above the cafe. Even the phone rarely rang anymore. Some days, Joe would wonder if anyone truly saw him, if anyone cared about the long hours he spent perfecting the art of coffee, the small touches he added just to brighten someone's morning. Tonight, the rain was relentless, pattering against the windows like tiny drums. Joe's shift was almost over, and he was already planning a quiet dinner for one in his apartment. A couple of regulars came in, nodded at him silently, and walked straight to their usual seats without so much as a smile. He served them with practiced ease, pretending the coldness of the world didn't sting, even though it did. As he wiped the counter one last time, he glanced down at the tip jar. There was something different about it tonight. Among the few scattered coins, a small folded piece of paper caught his eye. Curious, he reached for it. His fingers trembled slightly, not because he expected something special, but because he had learned not to expect much at all. He unfolded it slowly. The words on the paper were written in neat, careful handwriting. "Thank you for noticing me," it read. Joe froze. His heart skipped a beat. Not noticing him? Who could this possibly mean? And yet, a warmth spread through him, strange and unfamiliar. For the first time in weeks, he felt seen. Someone had acknowledged his effort, his care, and it hit him harder than any tip ever could. The days before that note had been heavy, like carrying a backpack full of stones that no one else could see. Joe had felt invisible. Every morning, he opened the cafe hoping for connection, for a smile, for even a simple thank you. And each day he returned home heavier than the last. Customers weren't cruel, not openly. Most were simply indifferent. They didn't mean to hurt him, but the lack of acknowledgement, the absence of gratitude, weighed on him. He remembered the day a regular had complained about his latte being too hot and left without a word of thanks. That had been a punch he didn't see coming. Behind the counter, Joe often stared at the empty tip jar. Each coinless day felt like a personal judgment. He questioned himself, his worth, and even the choice to keep the cafe open. "Maybe it's time to close," he muttered to himself one evening, his voice echoing in the empty room. He worried he was failing, not just as a business owner, but as a human being trying to touch other lives. Even his neighbors seemed wrapped up in their own worlds. No one knocked to ask if he wanted company. No one asked if he was all right. Joe tried to smile when they passed, but the smiles weren't returned. Loneliness had a way of creeping in slowly, layer by layer, until it settled deep inside, invisible yet heavy. On one particularly bad day, a young man came in, slouched and scowling, clearly having a rough morning. He ordered a coffee, dropped a coin in the jar, and muttered something that could have been a thank you or maybe not. Joe served him with the same gentle care he always did, but the young man left without a glance. That single moment, like many others, left Joe questioning if his kindness mattered at all. It was moments like these that made him consider giving up entirely. What was the point of pouring warmth into the world when the world gave nothing back? What was the point of caring when caring went unnoticed? And yet, he kept going. Every day, he opened the doors, brewed the coffee, wiped the counters, and hoped for a spark of connection, even as his heart grew heavier with each indifferent gesture. Then came the note. Joe held the small folded paper in his hand, staring at the words, "Thank you for noticing me." For a moment he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly he felt a tear slip down his cheek. It wasn't sadness, no, it was the opposite. Relief, hope, connection. The note wasn't signed, anonymous, but it didn't matter. Someone had seen him. Someone had felt that his care mattered. That tiny gesture lit a spark inside Joe's heart, a reminder that even small acts of kindness could ripple out in ways he would never know. The next morning, he went to work with a lighter step. He poured coffee with the same meticulous care but with renewed energy. He greeted every customer with his warmest smile, and to his surprise, many of them returned it. It was as if the note had shifted something invisible in the cafe, a gentle reminder that attention and gratitude could travel in both directions. Days passed and more notes appeared, tucked in the tip jar, placed on tables, sometimes even folded neatly inside napkins. Each one said something simple: "You made my day," "Thank you for your kindness," or "I noticed your smile." Joe began reading them aloud quietly when no one was around, letting the words sink into his soul. With each note, Joe felt less alone. The cafe transformed, not because the building changed, but because the invisible threads connecting people grew stronger. He realized that kindness doesn't always come with a grand gesture or a loud announcement. Sometimes, it's quiet, subtle, and anonymous, but its impact is profound. By the end of the week, Joe wasn't just serving coffee. He was serving hope. And the tip jar, once a symbol of emptiness, became a treasure chest of gratitude. Each note reminded him that his effort, his presence, and his care mattered, and that small recognition changed everything. Joe learned a simple truth: even when the world feels indifferent, even when loneliness presses down, one small act of kindness can awaken hope, restore faith, and light the darkest of days. Sometimes all it takes is one person noticing your heart. A single gesture, a few words, or a quiet thank you can change a life. Joe's story reminds us that kindness is never wasted, even when unseen. Every act of care has the power to reach someone in ways we'll never fully know. Notice others, show compassion, and watch the world light up, one heart at a time.